Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 8th of May 2024. I'm Councillor Ian Massey and I'm the convener of this committee. I'll now introduce the top table to you. On my far left is Councillor Grant Stewart, Vice Convener, Ms Jessica Guild, Democratic Governance Officer, and Mr Colin Elliott, Solicitor. And on my right is Mr Christian Smith, Development Management and Building Standards Service Manager, and Mr Sean Panton, Team Leader, Major Developments. The usual housekeeping, as is a hybrid meeting, members joining virtually are reminded that if you leave the meeting during consideration of any application, you are unable to participate or vote on that item when you return to the meeting. This also means that if a member loses their internet connection during consideration of any item, they should not vote on that item. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you are leaving the meeting, or if you have lost your connection and are therefore unable to vote on the item. And whilst we are operating as a hybrid meeting for the proceedings today, can I remind councillors and officers to use the chat box to attract my attention, which all members should have access to. I will now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and the attendance of those in the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. We have a few apologies this morning with substitutes. Councillor Allen with Bailey Ahern substituting, Councillor Reid with Councillor Anderson substituting, and Councillor Waters with Councillor McPherson substituting. We've got 4 members online. I'll ask to confirm they're present. Councillor Harvey.
Present.
Councillor James.
Good morning, Jess. Present.
Councillor Leishman.
Good morning.
And Bailey Williamson.
Present.
Thank you. All other members are present in the chambers, Convener.
Thank you. Right. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest in any items today? None. Then item 3, the minutes. Can we agree the minute of the meeting of the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 13th of March 2024?
Agreed.
Thank you. And agree the minute of the meeting of the Planning and Placemaking Committee on the 10th of April 2024. We have deputations today. Can I ask the committee if they agree to hear deputations on item 511 and 521? And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the deputations and members of the public watching today. Your request to speak has been granted. You will be called to the lectern as we reach the relevant item on the agenda and permitted 10 minutes to speak, followed by a period of time for questions from members. It is requested the content of your deputation is kept relevant to the planning considerations in relation to the item of business being discussed. Please also ensure that when answering questions, your response remains relevant and direct to the questions asked. Move on to item 511, major applications. This is for the mixed use development. Sorry, I will go back a second. I forgot one major thing. Councillor Braun, you requested to speak. No,
we've discussed.
Okay.
No.
I didn't get that. No. Okay, thank you. Right, so we'll move on to major application, which is 23-00504/FLM, which is for mixed use development comprising erection of 3 cafe restaurant units class 3 with drive-through facilities, business units class 4, electric vehicle charging hub, and formation of vehicle access parking areas, landscaping and associated works at land 90 metres south of Broxden Avenue, Perth. And to introduce the report is Mr Panton. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, councillors. As stated, the first application on the agenda today is a major application for a mixed-use development at Broxden, Perth. We are recommending approval today as a minor departure from the adopted local development plan. There is a departure as not all of the mixed-use development proposed complies with the employment use allocation of the site, mainly the 3 drive-through units. However, it is considered that the elements that do not comply with the allocation of the site will enable the delivery of the 14 business units, which are fully compliant with the site allocation. Furthermore, the proposed drive-throughs are compatible with the immediately neighbouring environment where there is already a drive-through restaurant present. Members should also note that should you be minded to agree with the recommendation for approval today, then this would trigger a notification to Scottish ministers due to the application receiving an objection from SEPA, who are a statutory consultee on grounds of flood risk. If the position changes from SEPA, then no referral is required. The position may change due to ongoing discussions. Please note that the Council's own structures and flooding team have no objection to the proposed development on grounds of flood risk, and Mr Gavin Bissett, one of our flooding engineers, is here today to answer any questions members may have in relation to drainage and flooding. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Here you can see the location of the site. The site is to the southeast of Broxden Roundabout, wedged between the M90 motorway and the A93 Glasgow Road. The site is immediately adjacent to Broxden service area, where there is a hotel, restaurant, fast food restaurant, petrol filling station and park and ride facility present. The site is allocated in an adopted local development plan for employment uses with site reference E2. Next slide, please. We now have a proposed site plan. The L-shaped building to the southeast of the site is the 14 business units, and the 3 drive-throughs are located along the northern boundary. In amongst the units are the associated path links, landscaping and parking and turning facilities. Due to the site levels, the site is split into 2 platforms with a retaining wall in between. Next slide, please. Here we now have the proposed elevations for the 14 business units. The units are clad in mid-grey insulated panels and will have a lightweight sedum roof. The overall floor space of the building is 1,954 square metres. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed floor plan of the business units. The building has been designed in a way which will allow for future division or amalgamation of units. This will therefore allow flexibility for future tenants. Next slide, please. We now have the elevations of the first of the drive-through units. It is intended that this unit will be operated by Burger King. The restaurant has a floor area of 275 square metres and includes internal seating, kitchen and staff areas. Next slide, please. The next drive-through proposed is intended to be operated by Starbucks. This unit is 188 square metres with an integrated roof totem. Please note that any signage proposed will be subject to separate applications for advertisement consent. Next slide, please. The last of the proposed drive-through units is now shown. There is not yet an intended operator for this unit, which measures 201 square metres. I will now take members through a series of photographs taken on my site visit last month. The first photograph shows the access road to the site, known as Broxden Avenue. From this image, you can see the existing drive-through restaurant occupied by McDonald's and the Perth Park and Ride denoted by the yellow arrow. Next image, please. This next photograph shows a newly constructed access road which will lead to the site. This section of the road is not yet open and is fenced off. Next image, please. Again, this photograph shows a newly constructed road. The access to the site will be taken from the approximate location of the red arrow. The building to the right of the image is a hotel currently occupied by Travelodge. Next image, please. We now have a view of the site itself. As seen, the site is not currently in any kind of use and is well bound by mature trees along the boundaries. Next slide, please. This image shows the footpath connection to the site and the adjacent core path from the recently completed Bellway Homes development known as Charlotte Gate. The proposed development will link into this path network. The blue arrow denotes the approximate location of the site. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. We do have a deputation on this, so I'll hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputation procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call on Mr. Rankin, agent on behalf of the applicant? Good morning, Mr. Rankin. You've probably been informed you've got 10 minutes, so whenever you're settled and ready to go, I'll start the clock.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today regarding this proposed development at Broxden Avenue. I'm the planning consultant for the applicant, Drysdale Holdings Limited, and representing them today. Mr Panton has already spoken through the planning application and the justification for recommending approval, and the applicant fully supports this recommendation to approve the application and grant planning consent. Over the course of the planning process, the applicant has engaged fully with Perth and Kinross Council to work positively and proactively and ensure that the development responds fully to its physical location and accords with the planning policy. As demonstrated by Mr Panton, the proposed development complies with National Planning Framework 4 and will deliver business units in accordance with the economic allocation of the site in the local development plan. The proposed drive-through uses complement the existing land use character of the area, and they themselves are employment generating uses. This proposal finally delivers on the promise of new business development at Broxton Avenue, which has been part of master plan proposals in one form or another for over 20 years. The development ensures that this much needed business floor space is delivered and has been designed to respond to specific market requirements in the Perth area, including physical features such as roller shutter doors, high eaves heights, and dedicated access for vans and larger vehicles. The vision for these units is that Perth-based firms have new high-quality accommodation to occupy and grow their businesses into, building on the tradition of Perth and Kinross being one of the best locations for new businesses to survive and thrive in Scotland. The Broxton Roundabout is one of Scotland's most significant road junctions, bringing together motorway routes between almost all of the country's major cities. The existing drive-through offer at Broxton operates at peak times, either at or over capacity, and there's a recognised need for this to be spread across more outlets to relieve pressure on the existing provision. Our proposal to provide 3 new drive-throughs with 2 committed and named operators, Starbucks and Burger King, will absorb some of this pressure and complement the existing offer. The attraction of this location to recognisable name brands such as these demonstrates its viability as a location for passing trade. Travellers using Scotland's motorway network and passing via the Broxton Roundabout can stop here, and the provision of up to 36 new high-speed EV chargers caters to users of electric vehicles and ensures that the development is future-proofed to respond to anticipated increasing demand for electric cars. We believe that this strategic location on the motorway network will also add confidence in Scotland's wider EV charging network, and that there is the necessary provision of high-quality facilities at appropriate locations to encourage more drivers to take the step towards owning an electrical vehicle in the future. And this is consistent with the Scottish Government's vision for Scotland's public electric vehicle charging network, published in 2023. It is noted that SEPA have a holding objection to this application and others in the area. We've worked in collaboration with the Council's flood team throughout the application process, and at their recommendation and that of our own flooding consultants, we've redesigned the site's sustainable urban drainage system and added a rain garden to the development to manage and accommodate surface water on the site. The flood risk has been fully assessed and the site is not identified as being at risk of flooding on the SEPA flood map. It's been determined that the proposed development will have a neutral impact on existing flood risk in the area, and the Council's own flooding team have no objection to the proposal. In terms of the local environment, this scheme provides a high-quality natural environmental setting. Currently, the site is brownfield and offers very limited biodiversity value. The rain garden I just mentioned will act as a biodiversity enhancement, and the sedum green roofs we're proposing on the business units will create a visually attractive development that provides habitats for wildlife and pollinators. The development has been sensitively designed within a high-quality landscaping scheme that's been positively reviewed by the Council's biodiversity and community green space officers. The development has also been positively assessed in terms of the Council's own policy on low-carbon development, primarily due to the incorporation of low-carbon technology and design within the buildings, and a significant contribution towards electric vehicle charging facilities. In this vein, the proposed operators of the drive-through units take steps to minimise their impact on the local area. Ample bins will be provided around each unit, and product packaging sold from each outlet comes with reminders of how it can and should be appropriately disposed of. Both named operators adhere to the view that the best way to reduce littering is not to create disposable waste in the first instance. And for example, Burger King no longer offer plastic lids on drinks, and Starbucks encourage the use of reusable cups. In terms of jobs, the drive-through units will create a number of employment opportunities for the local area, approximately 80 when these are constructed and operational. The nature of these jobs mean that it will be sourced from the local area and are suitable for a variety of candidates, including entry-level positions for those without formal experience or qualifications, and jobs will also be created for managerial and supervisor level positions. A further 42 jobs are expected to be supported in the business units once these are fully leased and occupied, meaning the entire development will accommodate around 120 jobs on site. In addition, we estimate that around 50 further jobs will be supported in the wider economy through the supply chain and economic activity generated by new wages and salaries paid to workers. The business units are designed to be internally customisable, so could accommodate a variety of businesses and uses, such as tradesmen's workshops, car detailing businesses, or small-scale light manufacturing. These are intended to be flexible to attract a variety of occupants and respond to latent demand for those types of units in the Perth area. In addition to supporting jobs and local business growth, these units will also generate new business rates and income for the local authority. In conclusion, we fully support the recommendation to approve the application and agree with the proposed conditions, and the applicant is also in agreement with the developer contributions towards transport infrastructure. If you have any questions about the proposal, I'd be happy to take those.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. We have questions in already. Councillor Leishman, can I have your first question, please?
Hello there, good morning. Thank you very much for coming along and speaking to us today. It's much appreciated. Just my first question really is touching on some of the jobs that you mentioned. Can you perhaps expand and say whether these jobs are firstly unionised jobs and secondly, will they pay at least the real living wage?
That's not information I would have to hand at the moment, I'm afraid. I can say that the Starbucks operator is a local franchisee who currently operates units in Perth. He operates the unit at the Triangle at Inveralmond and the unit on the High Street in the city centre. I'm personally not aware if they are unionised jobs, but I believe Starbucks is a living wage employer, but I don't want to be held to that. So I'm not sure is my answer.
Thanks very much, appreciate that.
Councillor Leishman, we'll come back with.
Sorry, just to come in, it's Colin Elliott, legal advisor here, Councillor Leishman. I appreciate that particular aspect was of interest to you, but in terms, that's what I would say is those are operational matters and not about the planning use. So really that's background information and not directly relevant to the assessment of the application. Thank you.
Councillor Leishman will come back for your second question. Belia Hearn.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation. My question is on the parking spaces. So can you tell us how many parking spaces there are in total? You've got 36 that are EV. There's 3 drive-through outlets, so they're going to have parking spaces dedicated for waiting spaces while their food's being cooked. And how many disabled spaces we've got? Thus, how many normal parking spaces is that going to leave?
We have, I believe it's 136 parking spaces on site. I need to double check that. I couldn't lay my hands on the information just there. Those are in accordance with the council's parking standards. The roads team has reviewed that and they've raised no objections to the parking provision on site. I can double check the numbers if you're happy for me to have a look through this, but I think it's 136.
Yeah, specifically, how many of it set aside for the drive-throughs for food waiting areas, and then how many are disabled spaces?
I think each unit, you can see each unit has at least one waiting space for drive-through users to wait on their food if there's a sort of backlog throughout the drive-through lane. The disabled spaces, I think I can count. I think there's 10 or 12 spaces, but again, that is in line with the council's parking standards, and the number of spaces has been designed to meet the required provision. Yeah, the thicker ones you can see there.
Bailey McLaren.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my question is actually regarding the core path. The existing core path currently is of poor surface it's really just sort of quite eroded in parts, clearly well used. The creation of this site will increase the use of that path. So would your applicant would consider contributing to upgrading the core path surface and improving that for the connectivity for the local residents?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the core path is quite an integral part of the site because it provides the connectivity to the park and ride to the east, and there's also the road bridge over the M90 to the south. We would be happy to work with the council in agreeing some form of upgrade to the core path. I think that would be reasonable, and we'd be happy to work with the council on that.
Thank you, that's brilliant.
Councillor Braun.
Thank you for your presentation, a very concise one. Coming back to the it's a sort of link question, the electric charging points. There's 36. Are they for visitors passing through the drive-throughs to use, or is it for the office workers to use? That's my first part of the question. The second part is, you haven't mentioned anything about a hydrogen charging point. I think it comes up in another paper, but well, I've been reading, and obviously you've been reading as well, that when hydrogen becomes available, it becomes the dominant form of power for cars, and electric charging points could be within a very short space of time obsolete for those. And I would think a lot of people visiting it would be passing through. It'd be like a service area. They're onward going somewhere else, and obviously electric cars take time to charge, where hydrogen is plug in, like petrol is done and gone. So I just wonder why you've taken 36 and not thinking about hydrogen, and the 36, are they used for office workers and visitors alike?
Yeah, so the site, it's not entirely clear from the plans, but it's in almost 2 levels because of the topography of the site. So the northern half is at a very slightly lower level to the northern half. Sorry, the southern half is at a higher level to the northern half. So the part with the business units sits at a slightly higher elevation. So we have 18 EV spaces at that level. So the idea being that they would be more for the use of the business units, but there would be no strict requirement for that to be limited in that way. And then there's another 18 at the sort of lower level for the drive-through users. But there would be no restriction on who could use them. In terms of your second question about the hydrogen fueling facility, it's not part of this proposal, but there's no reason that the site couldn't be adapted in the future if the demand was there. The demand we had at the time for putting the application in was for 36 EV chargers, but we're confident the site is adaptable for future changes in that if that's required.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'm just wondering, has there been any modelling done by you to establish how much impact this site's going to have on the city centre? Because obviously you're offering food outlets. A lot of people go into the city centre at the moment. So do you think there'll be an impact, and basically how big will that be?
Yeah, so we undertook a sequential analysis of the development in line with the council and the Scottish Government's planning policy. We assessed similar sites to this because of the drive-through uses. They have very specific locational requirements that need to be close to major road infrastructure, and the sites where you might find that those physical characteristics don't tend to be located in the city centre. We're confident that this is a distinct offer from what's already in the city centre, intended to cater primarily to a large portion of the business will be drawn from passing traffic. Obviously, there will be local visits as well, but the business model of the operators is predicated on being close to major transport infrastructure, such as the A9 and the M90.
Councillor Leishman, your second question.
Thanks very much, Vice Convener. It was actually, I think, pretty much covered by Councillor Cuthbert there. It's a slight variation possibly in that I understand that Starbucks and Burger King have committed to units, Just, I was wondering, in your experience of projects like this, what is the likelihood of small independent or smaller independent businesses being able to take on a unit here? Because I'm, like Councillor Cuthbert, I'm conscious that the retail offering in the city centre of Perth is pretty much based and continuing to be based on small independents.
Yeah, thanks. So in the drive-through market, there are a couple of new entrants and some local businesses. If I don't know if you've taken a drive out towards Loch Lomond, but there's an independent drive-through operator there. We're aware that sort of in Perth and Fife and Aberdeenshire, companies like Baines operate operate drive-throughs as well. So there's no reason that they couldn't take on one of the drive-throughs. As was mentioned, there's no designated operator lined up for that at the moment, but I think we would consider all potential occupants for that third drive-through, and that could be a local business, absolutely.
Mr. Rankin, there appears to be no further questions. We'll just give it. I was actually just going to say we'll give it a second because we always get late entries. Bailey Ahern.
Thank you. No, I was waiting for the answer to that question, and it follows on from the previous two questions. As a city centre councillor, I'm concerned about businesses moving out, and when we've in Veralmond, we had 2 supermarkets open up there. Is there any restrictions? Because you said earlier that the units are designed so you can take the partitions out and have bigger units. Is there any restrictions on a supermarket going in there, or are the types of businesses it can go in there?
Yes, so we've applied for Class 4 consent for those units, so that would limit it to business type uses, like I mentioned, kind of tradesmen's workshops, car detailing businesses, those type of businesses. The intention is absolutely not to provide any retail provision that would compete with the city centre in those units.
Okay, I think I'll have a question for officers later about that then. Thanks very much.
Mr. Rankin, I think we've got to that point. Thank you. You're free to go. There's no further deputations, so I'll hand back to you, Convener.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask the committee if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Braun.
I'll just do the first one if I may, Convener, and come back to you. I think this is a question leading on from Councillor Hearn a little bit, and perhaps from Mr. Elliott. This question of we've had a recent situation with Tesco's and Aldi, and there was MPF 27, MPF 427 was the point they were talking about 20-minute neighbourhoods. I haven't read the whole judgment, obviously. You may have. I'm only reading what's in the paper. Is this a similar situation that come up to get to us because there's all this effective pull away from the town centre?
I think you have to look at policy slightly differently in the sense of the decision you're referring to was an 1,800 gross floor space supermarket, much larger than what you're looking at here. The other difference is MPF4 makes specific reference to drive-throughs. So I would say you're assessing it in line with this report. The decision, I quick think about it, I don't think it's part of the broader picture, but it's not so specific to these individual units because they're drive-throughs. And to take it further forward, if there was a request for a supermarket, particularly in the business units, well, that's not the class use. There would have to be a full-blown planning application with a retail study for that that would be assessed. So the answer to that would be no at this stage in time, and it would have to come back.
Thank you. Bailey Williamson.
Thank you, Convener. I think my question's probably been answered already, but I'll ask it anyway. I understand that the properties that are being applied for are Class 3 and Class 4, and I understand also that on appeal, people can come back and reclassify Class 3 to a Class 1, which is the one thing we're trying to avoid. And I think Colin's just answered the question in the sense that that would require a full-blown planning application before it could take place. Is that correct?
Yes, so first of all, just to clarify as well, so the 14 business units are proposed as Class 4 units. So any change to retail of any sort would require a planning application in its own right in the future. So what we are granting today for the business units is Class 4 only. As for the drive-through units, they are proposed as Class 3. Yes, there are some permitted changes that you can take from Class 3, but because of the nature of the buildings here, it would be unlikely that anything other than Class 3 would occupy them. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, but so there is the potential that you could come back to apply for Class 1 at a later date, but that would require planning permission. Is that right, Sean?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor James.
Thanks, convener. I have a couple of issues with the report that's before us, and I was recently chastised for going against our officers and experts' decision on a planning matter, which subsequently went to the Scottish Reporter and was turned down. I was chastised because I was seconder of a refusal on that. And here we are in this report, we've got conflicting expert advice. So we've got our own experts on the council telling us that it's all okay. And we've got SEPA saying, well, actually, no, it's not. So I'd like to know, first of all, why we're going against SEPA's advice when I've been chastised for going against expert advice. And also with the roads to this site, again, with our experts, we seem more fixated on providing parking spaces for push bikes on a main junction between the A9, M90, huge route, than we do the safety of the road, which is already a nightmare at the best of times. I noticed that the actual traffic survey was done at busy times on a Thursday, 8:30 up to 8:30 in the morning, 7 to 8:30, 7 to 10 and 15:30 to 18:30 on a Thursday in February. I'd be very interested to see the traffic survey on a Friday lunchtime for the same thing. But I just wonder why have we got conflicting evidence given to us, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Gavin, can you answer the first part of the question, and Lachlan, can you take the second part, please?
No problem. Morning, councillors. With regards to the differing views of the council's flooding team and SEPA, I'd comment that SEPA's objection is more of a holding objection subject. They're looking for further information, essentially. It's not a objection in principle at this point. So they're looking for a bit more clarity on some items. From the flooding team's point of view, we've reviewed things and we're happy that this complies with national and local planning policy, applies quite stringent requirements on the developer in terms of their surface water drainage arrangements, and the site itself isn't at flood risk. And I should also highlight that SEPA's objection isn't around flood risk to the site, it's around the well-established wider flood risk. So sort of in summary, just to quickly answer your question, it really is just SEPA's just waiting on more information, and we have put together some feedback on that, but I'd probably have to defer to planning, the planning officers to answer on that fully.
Okay, thank you. Lachlan, can you answer the second part of this question?
Yes, thank you. In terms of the survey that's been undertaken, the survey was undertaken, as you said, on a Thursday. It's standard practice for a weekday survey to be undertaken for an assessment of a planning application. So that's generally a Tuesday, Wednesday or a Thursday. The times that have been surveyed, as you mentioned, 7 to 10 and 15:30 to 18:30, that's the standard kind of busy times within Perth, and that's why those have been chosen. Now, I appreciate that you're kind of saying that the Friday might be busier, but generally for a transport assessment, we would be looking at the weekday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and that's kind of standard across all of our kind of assessments.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. I'm just going back to the core path, and I'm just asking officers how we can incorporate a condition that addresses the upgrade of the core path. I believe the steps that are attached to the path are not included in the boundary of the application, so that is not, but you know, it's something that is agreed prior to the commencement of the development and also will be implemented. I wouldn't want to see them coming back here to renege on a condition such as that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bailey McLaren. Yes, so we could certainly apply a condition that said prior to commencement of works, details of the core path to the east of the site and that kind of white section of the plan you can see before you. We can only really insist upon the part that's within the red line boundary, but as you've heard from the applicant this morning, they're agreeable to that. So we could ask for them to submit a scheme for our consideration, which shows that it's accessible and better surfaced. Thereafter, we can put a tailpiece on the condition that says it must be implemented prior to the occupation of any units. And that way, if there isn't any compliance, we could step in from an enforcement perspective. Hopefully that answers your query.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. I'll just
Sorry, could I come in?
Yeah, thank you.
Just thinking it through, if there's to be temporary changes, temporary works to the core path within the red line site, there may be need for another condition to manage that process, because strictly speaking, that would be obstructing the core path for a short period of time. So I think there might be that sort of condition been put on before to have a, what do you call it, a management scheme, management plan, Sean?
Yes, you're correct, Colin. We'd need a second condition that just says about the management of that core path. Also as well, condition 24 in the report, you would need to delete that condition and replace it with the new conditions. So condition 24 that's in the report just now just says that path can't be obstructed at any time during construction. Clearly, if they're going to have to upgrade that path and put new surfacing down, it will be obstructed. So we'd need to delete 24 and replace it with the condition I spoke about and a follow-on condition like Mr. Elliott said.
Right, lovely. Thank you. Thanks for all that help and input.
Thank you.
Yes, if committee agrees. Sorry, thank you for that, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you. Councillor James, do you have another question?
Yeah, thanks, convener, and I appreciate the advice given by both Lachlan and Gavin just now with the roads and flooding. I totally get that. But the point Gavin makes, it's not the site that the flood risk I'm concerned about. It's the wider area. You know, we all know Craigie Burn and the issues we've had with that. I noticed in the reply from SEPA, their comments on 4 was given that the site drainage won't be adopted by PKC. Where are we? What measures are in place to ensure these assets will be maintained? So do we have, I just had a quick look through the conditions. I couldn't see anything, but do we have a condition for the maintenance of the SUDs if we were minded to go ahead with this, please?
Thanks, Councillor James. There's a pre-commencement detailed drainage design condition attached to any potential approval. As part of that, the long-term maintenance arrangements need to be finalised and agreed with ourselves and the planning team. So that's typically how it's controlled. We'd be looking for the SUDs to be designed to an adoptable standard, be that for Scottish Water or the council, so that may not prevent that in future from being a route. But typically at the moment, the proposal is that it will remain private. And as I say, we'd be seeking the full details of that arrangement prior to satisfying any condition attached to approval.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Braun. Councillor Braun.
Sorry, that's all right. Don't worry. It's a technical question, perhaps, of Mr. Panton, really. We've got obviously a different opinion between our flooding consultants and SEPA, and obviously the developer knows about it. I'm just wondering why we didn't clarify that situation first and then come back to committee. Why it seemed to be done the other way around. So we're approving. Obviously, there's going to be something still to be done on the flooding issues. From what you were saying, I think it goes back to SEPA first to see if they're happy, and then they may say no, and it goes to Scottish ministers. I may have misunderstood that, but I'm just wondering we didn't clarify that first before it's come to committee. That's all. Since the developer knows about the situation.
Thanks, Councillor Braun. Yeah, like Mr. Bissett said, start off with SEPA's objection is a holding objection rather than an objection in principle. So first of all, I suppose we need to think about the site at present. There is no drainage there at all. So during a heavy rainstorm or bad weather, all that water, there's no drainage at all. It's just going on to Broxden Avenue down into the Craigieburn catchment. And obviously that is a big issue for the wider area within Perth. Once this development is in place, it will result in some betterment because there is drainage going in and there's the attenuation tanks and the likes. So we're confident, SEPA and the council's flood team, that it will result in some betterment. So that's why there's not an objection in principle from SEPA, because the site itself isn't at flood risk. It's just that they wanted more details. So those details were submitted by the applicant. Our flood team have reviewed them and we're happy. And SEPA have asked for further clarification again. So I suppose it was just purely in the interest of time that we have come to this committee. But SEPA have highlighted that they may be in a position to remove their objection. If that was the case, we wouldn't have to notify Scottish ministers. But like I say, although on the paper we have to say SEPA have objected, it's a holding objection rather than an in principle objection. So I hope that clarifies for you.
Thank you. There's no further questions. So can I ask for a motion? Okay. I'll put a motion forward for approval. I believe this is a good development. All the questions have been answered. Our flooding team are happy with it. SEPA, I understand, have a no hold and objection on it, but I believe that can be sorted out. I just think that this is a good place for the businesses and for the drive-throughs. We have drive-throughs there already, so I'd like to see that go ahead. Bailey McLaren, you're going to second the motion.
Thank you. Happy to second the motion, incorporating the conditions that we spoke about earlier in regard to the core path. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I am agreeable to that. Yes. Now, Councillor Braun, you put in a motion. Is this a motion?
No, you got him before me, actually. And then I was going to second it, but then you went to Councillor McLaren, so I've just been left out. So thank you very much. But I would just concur with what you were saying. Thank you.
Bailey Williamson, is it the same for yourself?
Likewise, myself and I find myself in the same point as Councillor Braun.
Okay. Then can I ask for an amendment then? Okay, no amendment. Do members have any comments on the report? No comments. Mr. Elliott, I believe you want to come in here.
Yes, just for members' clarity, that's members agreeing unanimously to grant, subject to amended conditions, the 2 additional conditions, with one condition 24 dropping out, and subject to section 75, with the possibility of referral to the Scottish Government due to the holding objection from SEPA at the moment. If that comes off, there's no referral, and it would be grant subject to amended conditions section 75 only. Okay.
Thank you for that. Councillor James, you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Thanks, convener. And it's general comment. I'm actually pleased to see this coming forward, but I'm just a little disappointed in the information that we are getting. You know, conflicting information. We're we're making a decision on a major development, I mean, we're always told to take the advice of experts, but sometimes the experts are the people that live with it on a daily basis, and I'd like to take, going forward, cognizance of those issues when we do decide on planning matters. I take it we're looking at just the planning site, but this does have an effect on the wider area, and I just hope that the drainage issues will alleviate all of SEPA's concerns. But all in all, it's quite, it's good to see the development. I just also have real concerns with the traffic at Broxton, which is never an issue apparently, but they don't probably sit in the queue every single day of the damn week. But thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Leishman, you have a comment.
Thank you, convener. Yes, it relates back to one of the questions that I asked earlier on. While I completely appreciate straying into the operational element there, I don't think that, and I appreciate also that the planning committee is apolitical, and possibly my question strayed into that as well. But when we look at, following on from what Councillor James has just said, when we look at the wider issues that we have in Perth and Kinross of being a low-wage economy, then I think my question was entirely relevant, and I think it might, while we have to make our judgment on the case that's before us, I think it's worth bearing in mind.
Thank you for that. Okay then, so permission is therefore granted, subject to the removal of condition 24 to be replaced by new conditions, and also the section 75. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to local application. There's one local application, and that's for the erection of office building class 4 and 2 cafe restaurant units class 3 with drive-through facilities, car parking, landscaping and associated works at land 100 metres southwest of Broxden Avenue, Perth. And to introduce the report is Mr. Panton.
Thank you, convener. As stated, the next item on the agenda today is a local application for another mixed-use development adjacent to the last application site which was before you at Broxden in Perth. Similar to the last application, we are recommending approval of the application as a minor departure from the adopted local development plan. This again is due to the proposal not being fully compliant with the site allocation. However, the provision of the drive-throughs will allow the delivery of a 3-storey office block which is fully compliant with the site allocation. Members should also note that CPUB again objected to this application, so I'd reiterate that our structures and flooding team are present today should members have any drainage or flooding queries. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Here you can see the location of the site. The site is to the southeast of Broxden Roundabout, wedged between the M90 motorway and the A93 Glasgow Road. Again, the site is immediately adjacent to the Broxden service area and is allocated in the adopted local development plan for employment uses with site reference E2. Next slide, please. Here we have the proposed site plan. The proposed office block is the yellow T-shaped building to the top left of the plan, and the 2 blue units are the proposed drive-throughs. The access to the site will be from a centrally located roundabout. Next slide, please. This plan shows a sectional view of the site upon completion. You can see here how the sloping topography of the site will be accommodated by the proposed development. Next slide, please. Here we have the proposed elevations for the office block building. The building will be 3 stories with a flat cantilever roof design. The building also incorporates a green living roof to ensure that biodiversity enhancement measures are built into the design. Next slide, please. We now have a plan showing the proposed floor plan of the offices and associated parking and landscaping. Next slide, please. This plan shows the elevations of the first of the drive-through units. The building will be finished in timber and composite cladding, contrasting render, and will have a brickwork base course. Next slide, please. We now have the second of the proposed drive-through units. You can see here the glazed frontage which is to be used as a design feature. I will now take members through a series of recent photographs taken last month to show the site in more context. This first photograph shows the location of the site, denoted by the red arrow. The blue arrow denotes the location of the site of the previous application that was before you. Next image, please. This photograph shows the rear of the Travelodge Hotel, with the site being behind the Harris fencing to the right of the image. Next slide, please. This photograph shows the site when viewed from the rear of the Travelodge. The yellow arrow denotes Broxton Roundabout. Next image, please. This final photograph shows the site when viewed from the Travelodge car park. The site is denoted by the pink star. Here you can also make out the height of the existing hotel, which is similar to that of the office block proposed. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Panton. We do have a deputation on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call on Mr. Lorimer, agent on behalf of the applicant, and he's going to be supported by Mr. Scott Kiddy. Mr. Lorimer, I'm sure you're aware of the procedure. You've got 10 minutes for your deputation. I'll give you a prompt after 9 minutes, so whenever you're settled and ready to go, I'll start the clock.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My name is Michael Lorimer of Ryden Planning Consultants, and I'm appointed agent on this application on behalf of my client, West Coast Estates. I'm also joined by Alistair Scott Kiddy of Fairhurst, who are appointed as drainage consultant and transport consultant on the application. I'd like to thank the Chair and members for granting our request to speak in relation to the planning application for a proposed mixed-use development incorporating a purpose-built office building along with a cafe and restaurant and associated drive-through facilities on land at Broxton Avenue. Members will recall my client's recent application reference 2300192/FLL for the site to the immediate east, which was approved for a new EV charging and hydrogen refueling station by this committee on the 13th of December last year. The current application represents an interlinked proposal that will create a significant inward investment and employment for the area. The site benefits from an extant planning permission and master plan covering a much larger area, which identifies the land subject to this application for commercial use. The adopted LDP identifies the land as a core employment designation, which supports traditional class 4, 5 and 6 uses, as well as ancillary service facilities. The proposal seeks a new 3-storey office pavilion comprising just over 2,000 square metres of class 4 use in accordance with the LDP designation and related policy 7A. MPF 4 Policy 26, Business and Industry, contains similar policy provision which supports the development of Class 4 use on business and industrial allocations. The proposed cafe and restaurant drive-through facilities are very much envisaged as ancillary services to complement the primary function of the core business area designation. Both MPF 4 Policy 26 and 7A allow for the provision of complementary services to support business and industrial allocations. As noted by officers within the committee report, the cafe and restaurant will each have a floor area of around 180 square metres, which is only a marginal increase from the 100 square metre stipulation within criteria E of LDP Policy 7A, which supports ancillary uses. Consideration should also be given to the established roadside services function at Broxton and related adjacent facilities when considering the proposed drive-through cafe and restaurant. It has also been demonstrated that the modest floor space associated with the Class 3 cafe and restaurant will not have a significant impact on the overall provision of identified core employment land at Broxton, falling well below the 15% threshold set out in policy criteria E of LDP Policy 7A. We fully support the comprehensive and pragmatic assessment of the proposal by planning officers and welcome their support for the principle of development when weighing up the proposal against the policies of the development plan, wider benefits and economic impacts of the proposal. We also welcome the proactive discussions and engagement with officers and relevant consultees. As outlined in paragraph 32 of the report, a full suite of technical information has been submitted in support of this application. Through positive discussions and negotiation, a number of minor amendments have been undertaken to ensure that all technical matters raised by consultees in relation to design, amenity, access and transport, drainage, biodiversity enhancements and waste management have been addressed. With the exception of SEPA, all consultees are satisfied with the proposal. is therefore disappointing that SEPA has placed a holding objection on the application on the basis that they consider the information submitted is insufficient to assess flood risk. As noted by officers and the Council's own flood team, the site is not at risk of surface water or fluvial flooding, nor is there a history of flooding at the site. The application has been supported by a flood risk statement and drainage assessment to the satisfaction of the Council's flood team, who have no objection to the proposal subject to standard conditions. The proposed drainage strategy ensures that post-development surface water runoff does not exceed pre-development levels, all in line with LDP and MPF4 policies. Indeed, the drainage strategy reflects that of our client's recently approved application for an EV and hydrogen refuelling hub on the immediately adjoining site to the east. It is worth highlighting that application did not draw any objection from SEPA and was approved by this committee in December. On behalf of my client, I would respectfully request that members support the officer's recommendation today. Approval of this proposal will secure $6 million in inward investment, facilitate the creation of a new purpose-built office and complementary food hub, in turn generating long-term benefits to the local economy, the creation of around 100 jobs. Both Alistair and I would be happy to answer any questions that members have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lorne. We'll give it a moment for the chat function to populate. Members, if you could submit your questions. Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. My question is with regards to the office block and the 3 floors in there. What sort of design is it? Is it designed so that it can be used by smaller businesses, or is the intention to do it so you get one larger business in? The concerns I've got is we already have a lot of empty office space in Perth, and we're just going to build another building that's going to remain empty. Equally, the other concern is that you're going to build it for smaller businesses, which are going to move out of the city centre into that block as well. For a number of reasons, it might be more cost effective for them to move out of the city centre environment. So I have concerns on both sides in bringing businesses out of the city centre, but also being a building that's just going to remain empty. And do you have any interest in moving into that office block?
Okay. Yeah, so the office has, the intention is that it would be one occupier. Our client, West Coast Estates, is in advanced discussions with Algo, who's a local Perth-based employer who I'm sure you're aware of, who are intending relocating to this location. In terms of moving out of city centre, I mean, the area is allocated for employment purposes. So in line with both national and local policy, a class 4 use on that site is considered to be appropriate. If for whatever reason the deal fell through with Algo, or they chose not to relocate, then I mean the office is fairly flexible. It could potentially be subdivided into smaller units, but at present it would be, the intention would be just to have one occupier in the building.
Yeah, the Algo building at the moment in the city is currently subdivided into smaller offices. Is that their intention to move the entire operation from there, or are they just going to operate a new building with subdivided bit of offices?
Could we ask a question about the planning application, not about our business processes?
I'm concerned about the use of the building. If it's taking businesses away from the city centre, I'm not happy. So I think it's quite appropriate to find out what use that building's going to be.
I think Mr. Lorimer has answered that question. Thank you. Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Convener, and thank you, sir, for your presentation today. Quick question: you mentioned, and I suppose this leads on from the other application in the adjacent site with regards to flooding, and you said there's no evidence of surface flooding. As somebody who's used the travel lodge, which is next door to your site, even on a dry day, there's a huge puddle between that and the pub there. It's still there even on dry days. Will your drainage system be connecting to that system, or will it be going to another area, please?
I'll probably just pass you over to Alistair from Fairhurst, who's the appointed drainage consultant. He's probably best placed to answer that
Thank
question.
you.
That's all.
The drainage system will be attenuated in site. So if you imagine this site's at the top of the catchment, at the moment the rain is falling on the site and it's got free flow, and will end up in roads and surrounding areas. The development will provide a formal drainage system that's connected to the sewers and the downstream infrastructure. It will be attenuated in site with underground attenuation, and site levels will prevent any ponding or flooding locally within car parks and the like. So the SUD system works on two levels. There's the porous surfacing, which will clean the water. It will then go into the ground, into attenuation tanks. It will be held there and it will discharge at an agreed rate that has been agreed with the council and design standards, and that's a greenfield runoff. So in a similar situation to your planning colleague's description in the previous application, there's actually a betterment that gets created here, both in terms of adjusting topography, but also the actual runoff that ends up in the downstream infrastructure.
Thanks for that.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. I just thank you for your presentation. The report, I think you said it yourself, that the important part of this is the two cafe restaurant areas within the site. I just wondered, do you envisage a demand for those? I don't want to get into specifics about anybody there, but we've just approved Starbucks, Burger King, there's a McDonald's already in the site, there's a Costa Coffee across the road, a family restaurant across the road. I mean, is there going to be a demand, you think, for it?
Yes, I mean, our client has progressed the application, is in discussions with an operator, EG Group, who operate up and down the country, and have a proven track record of delivering cafe, restaurant, drive-through facilities across Britain. So yes, I mean, we're confident that there's demand there, hence why they proceeded with the application.
Gentlemen, there appears to be no further questions, so you're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? No questions for officers? Bailey Ahern.
Thank you. It's not so much a question as a request for a short recess. I want a bit of information from legal officers with regards to whether I do an amendment.
Yeah, I'm happy for that. We'll give 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Is everyone back? Okay, thank you. Mr. Elliott has something to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. For members' information, particularly those that are virtual, the purpose of those discussions is Bailey Hearn was, as you know, expressing some concern about office space, offices and businesses moving from the city centre up to this site. We've had a discussion over the policy. What I've advised is that, of course, as you heard, this site up at Broxton is zoned for employment uses. This office use fits that employment use, and I've indicated that the particular concern he has is not something which is addressed in policy, and therefore I think it would be difficult, that could not form part of a use.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? I don't see any further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Councillor Illingworth.
Yeah, I'm happy for the planning application to proceed, and I'm happy with the information that we've received from the planning department on this application.
Thank you. Bailey Williamson.
Yeah, I was going to do the same thing, but Councillor Illingworth has beat me, but happy to second if necessary.
Thank you. Can I ask for an amendment? No amendment. Do members have any comments on the report? Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to have that discussion, and I appreciate the advice given by Mr. Elliott and his small notification to the committee about what was discussed. I just want to expand that I'm all for businesses coming to Perth, and I would applaud anything that's done to bring the business in. What I am slightly concerned about is our developments surrounding Perth, Inveralmond and Broxton, in bringing business to there and actually taking it away from the city centre, where we have a huge issue of trying to bring businesses into the city centre, get people in and shopping in not just the big national shops, but also the huge number of independent shops that we have here. Appreciate this may bring in new business, and we have heard that there is one business moving possibly from a location within the city to Broxton. It may well be that somebody else comes in, another business comes in, but I applaud everything we do to try and bring businesses in, but I'm really cautious about trying to move businesses and away from and people away from the city centre. So I just wanted to clarify part of the discussion and what my concern was about. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey Ahern. Any further comments? No further comments. Therefore, planning permission is therefore granted in line with the recommendations contained in the report of handling. Thank you. That concludes the business for today. So thank you to everyone turning up. Thank you to the deputations and those online. Thank you.